Hello and welcome to our YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe and follow along. Today the topic we are going to discuss is the static routing. I have designed this network for you in which we have 3 routers, and in green we have 5 networks to configure and implement the static routing on this complete network. Okay, so please stay with us till the end so that you would be able to learn the complete process of static routing. And if you have learned this video and practice along, you would be able to implement static routing on any kind of network wherever you like. So let's come to the point, and let me tell you that these are the 5 networks. 10.0.1.0 is the network on this interface of this router. On this side we are going to implement this network. On this side of the network we are going to implement this network address 10.0.2.0, and in the yellow we have the IP addresses for the ports. Okay, for this PC I have this IP address, for this port I have this IP address 10.0.2.1, and for this network I have 10.0.0.1 IP address for this port and 10.0.0.2 for this port. Same is the case for this network also, and for this network we have this IP address 10.1.1.1 for this interface, and for this IP address I have already configured 10.1.1.10. so I have not configured anything on these routers till now, and I'll configure each and everything. You will see the complete process of static routing. So please stay with us till the end of this video and you will be able to learn the complete process of static routing. So let's come to the point. Let's see the status of these routers before configuring anything. Okay, so let's open this router. If I see the routing table of this router, I will see that show IP route. You see, I have not configured any route on this router, so there is no route to any network on this router. And if I see the status of the ports on this router, I'll use the command show IP interface brief. So you can see I have not configured any IP address on any interface right now. Okay, same is the case with this router as well. If I see enable show IP interface brief, you see that I have not configured anything on any interfaces, so this router configuration is still empty. And if I see the routing table of this router, show IP route, you see that there is no route to any network on this router right now, and same is the case with this router as well. Okay, so once I'll give the IP addresses of these interfaces which are directly connected to this router, it will pick up these networks in its directly connected networks. Okay, let's assign the IP addresses to these interfaces which are directly connected to this router. Interface gigabit Ethernet 0x0. For this interface I have the IP address 10.1.0.1. okay, 10.1.0.1 is the IP address, and 255.255.255.0 is the subnet mask. Remember the command no shut to switch on the port. And for this interface gigabit Ethernet 0x1, we have this IP address 10.1.1.1. interface gigabit 0x1, IP address 10.1.1.1 555.255.255.0, and no shut is the command to switch on the port. You see, I have configured the IP addresses on these two ports of this router. Let's configure the IP addresses for these two interfaces of this router. You see, we are going to configure the IP address for this interface as 10.0.0.2 and for this interface 10.1.0.2. okay, interface gigabit Ethernet 0x1. We have the IP address 10.0.0.2 255.255.255.0. no shut is the command to switch on the port, and we are going to access the second interface gigabit Ethernet 0x0, and for this interface we have the IP address 10.1.0.2 255.255.0. okay, so you see that as we have configured the IP addresses for these two interfaces, these ports have changed their status to green. okay, and we are going to configure the IP addresses of the interfaces for this router as well. Enable configure terminal. For this interface gigabit Ethernet 0x1 we have 10.0.1.1 interface gigabit Ethernet 0x1. we have the IP address 10.0.1.1 255.255.255.0. no shut is the command. For this interface I have configured this IP address. For this interface I will configure this IP address. Interface gigabit Ethernet 0x2 IP address 10.0.2.1 255.255.255.0. no shutdown is the command. And for this interface I will configure the IP address 10.0.0.1. okay, interface gigabit Ethernet 0x0. the IP address is 10.0.0.1 and the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. no shutdown is the command. okay, so we have configured the IP addresses on the interfaces of the routers. okay, so now before moving towards the static routing, let us see the status of these routers after configuring the IP addresses on the interfaces. Let us see the status of interfaces. You can see that we have the IP addresses configured for these two interfaces on this router 0x0 and 0x1, and we have configured the IP addresses on these interfaces. okay, we can see that. And if I check the routing table on this router, show IP route, you can see that as I have configured the IP addresses on these interfaces, this router has picked up the directly connected networks to it. okay, this is the directly connected network, which is 10.1.0.0/24. this is the directly connected network to this router. C means directly connected network, and this is also 10.1.1.0. this is the network address of this network, and it means that this network and this network are directly connected to this router. Okay, so this router has picked up the directly connected networks to it. Okay, after we have configured the interfaces IP addresses. Okay, let's examine the second router as well. We are on the router 2, and if I apply the command show IP interface brief, we can see that we have configured the IP addresses on these two interfaces, gigabit Ethernet 01 and 00. We have configured the IP addresses 10.1.0.2 for this port and .2 for this port. Okay, so if I check the routing table of this router, show IP out, we see that this router has also picked up the directly connected two networks to it. One is 10.0.0.0. This one, this router has picked up this network as its directly connected network, and this network also 10.1.0.0 as its directly connected network. Okay, before configuring the static routing, we are examining that how the router is behaving. So if I check the status of this router after configuring the IP addresses on these interfaces, let's see, show IP interface brief. You can see that we have been configured with the we have configured the three IP addresses on three interfaces here. And if I check the status of the routing table, show IP out, you can see that we have the directly connected networks 10.0.0.0. This one is the directly connected network to this router. Okay, and 10.0.1.0, this one is the directly connected network to this router also, and 10.0.2.0 is the directly connected network to this router as well. So it has picked up the three directly connected networks to it. And what about this L local network? It means that the interface through which this network is connected to the router, that interface has the IP address of 10.0.0.1. Same is the case for this network as well, that for this network we are connected to this interface. So this was the complete briefing before implementing the static routing on this network. So we are going to enable and implement the static routing now to this network. Please stay with us, and if you have not subscribed this channel yet, please subscribe and follow along. So now we are going to implement the static routing. As we know that this router has directly connected networks to it in its routing table, we have to add the networks 10.1.0.0 and 10.1.1.0, these two networks in the routing table of this router. For this purpose, we are going to add this network address in the routing table of this router. Configure terminal. So for static routing, we have the command IP route and the IP address of the network 10.1.0.0, and then the subnet mask 255.255.255.0, and then the next hop IP address. Next hop IP address will be the IP address of this interface, which is 10.0.0.2. Okay, it means that we are connected to this router via this interface. Okay, we are going to tell this router that we can access this network 10.1.0 via this port 10.0.0.2. okay, so we are going to give the next hop IP address to this router. Yes, this is forwarding router's address. So this router will forward our request to connect into this network, and the IP address of the port is 10.0.0.2 and enter. okay, so we have added this network into the routing table of this router via this port. okay, and same is the case we are going to do with this network, that we are going to add this network into the routing table of this R1, and this router and this network is accessible via this port. okay, so we are going to add it into our routing table as well. IP route 10.1.1.0 255.255.255.0, and same is the IP address of the port. Both the networks are connected to this router via this port. okay, so we have press enter, and both the networks are added into the routing table of this router. If I see the routing table of this router, show IP route, you see that these are the 3 directly connected networks to this router, and these 2 are the networks which are added through static routing. S means static routing. We have applied the static routing, and we have added this network 10.1.0.0, this one, and 10.1.1.0, this one, into the routing table of this router via static routing. okay, via these 2 commands. okay, so we have applied the static routing on this router, and in the same way we are going to apply the static routing on this router as well. So now we are going to implement the static routing on this router. We know that these 2 are the directly connected networks to this router, so we are going to add this network, and this network into the routing table of this router, because they are not directly connected to this router. Let's apply the static routing on this router. Now enable configure terminal IP route, and for this network we will add 10.1.1.0 255.255.255.0, and for the next hop IP address we are going to add the IP address of this interface, because this network is accessible to this router via this interface. okay, so we are going to add the IP address of this interface as the next hop IP address 0.1. okay, so we have added this route into the routing table of this router via static routing, and we will implement the same for these 2 networks. IP route 10.0.1.0 255.255.255.0. for this network we are connected to, this router is connected to this network via this port gigabit ethernet 0x0. so we have to give the IP address of this port here 10.0.0.1. okay, we have added this network via static routing into the routing table of this router. We are going to apply the same for this network as well. IP route 10.0.2.0 255.255.255.0, and the IP address of the next hop will be the same here, because this network is also accessible via this port to this router. So we have added all three networks. The first one is this, and these two as well, into the routing table of this network. If we examine the routing table of this router now, show IP route, you can see that we have these two static routes added into this network via these interfaces, and we have also added this route via static routing into the routing table of this router. So we have added total of 3 static routes into the routing table of this router. And now let's apply the static routing for router 3 as well. We are going to add this network, this one, and this one, these 3 networks into the routing table of this network, this router. Okay, so I will use the command IP route 10 for this network, 10.0.0.0 255.255.255.0. we can access this network via this port, so we are going to give the IP address of this port here, which is 10.1.0.2. okay, we have added this network. We will apply the same for these two networks. IP route 10.0.1.0 255.255.255.0, and the port address for the next hop IP address will be the same, because all these 3 networks are accessible to this router via this port. Okay, IP route 10.0.2.0 sorry 255.255.255.0 via the same port. So we have added all these 3 networks into this routing table of this router via static routing. Okay, so let's see the routing table of this router. Show IP route. You can see that these are the 3 networks which are added via static routing into the routing table of this router, and these 2 are the directly connected networks to this router. So this was the implementation of the static routing on all the routers. As we have configured the static routing on all these 3 routers, and now our network, and we have checked the routing table of the routers as well. Now our network should be converged, and all the connectivity should be successful. If I try to ping this PC, the PC3 from the PC1, I should be successful because the networks are converged now. So if I check the connectivity, ping 10.1.1.10, for the first try it might be failed, but for the next try it should be successful. Yes, you can see that we have received some of the replies, and if I check again, we can see that we are accessing this PC from PC1, and it means that our network is converged now, and our static routing is successful for this PC, for this complete network. and if I try to access from this PC, you can see ping 10.1.1.10. yes, this PC is also getting reply from the PC3. It means that the complete network is converged now, and our lab is completed now. So this was the complete implementation of static routing. I hope you have learned and you will apply this static routing concept. So I thank you all for your valuable time, and still, if you have not subscribed our YouTube channel, please subscribe and follow along. Thank you.